Good afternoon. All right. How many people here have seen Pete Seeger? Yeah, perform. Live. Wow, that's a lot. Fantastic. Well, today you're in for a treat. You have Hank and Claire. They met in 2008. They've been singing together for 6 years. They love and pass along old and new songs and tell stories that touch you in the heart and the funny bone. In addition to their Pete Seeger tribute, Hank and Claire have recorded 2 CDs and perform at festivals, house concerts, and in many community venues, so look for them. And you can add your name to the email list over here. They've got a couple of CDs for sale that you might want to check out. And let's see. Thanks for coming. I'm John. I work for the library, and we love to see this room filled up like this. This is absolutely wonderful. And without further ado, Hank and Claire.
Thank you so much for coming. This month marks 2 years since the death of Pete Seeger. He lived very much in the public eye, and much is written about him. We can't do justice to his life and work in an hour. Just the discography of Pete's recordings takes 42 pages in the biography by David Dunaway. However, Hank and I became interested in understanding the way that his activism inspired his music. So we're going to sing a bit, and we're going to talk a bit. We may drop a verse or two in the interest of time, and we'll do versions that may be familiar and will be easier for singing along. We hope you take away a little more than you already knew about this man, and that you enjoy these songs that are so much a part of American music. To explore this man's legacy more deeply, local libraries are a great resource. And we want to thank the Kitsap Regional Library for their support of this program. Now, can everybody hear me okay? Yes. It's not too loud? We're good? All right, and then I want to point out that at the back of the room is a table with 2 trifolds that have photographs from Pete's life. I put a caption with each one to explain what it is. And below those trifolds are the Hank and Claire personal library of Pete Seeger books. You are welcome to leaf through them. We would love it if they stayed in this room. And if you try to check them out, we're hoping they won't let you. So it's just probably okay. You probably won't confuse it. Pete Seeger wrote many songs and performed for decades, right into his 90s. Over the years, he received many awards, including 4 Grammys for recordings, a Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, a National Medal of Arts, and in 1996, he was inducted into, anybody know? The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I kid you not. But he prized above all his ability to connect with audiences. In 1967, he said, "My main skill as a musician is in pacing a group of people I've never seen before, improvising a program which seems to make sense, and having it flow from one song to another. Only after I touched base with the kids out there, the women, the men, the old people, the discouraged, the impatient, we finally pull things together. It's as though I've taken my golden thread and I'm weaving it through one person's buttonhole and then another, and finally we're all together. Then we can really sing some songs." So let's sing one together now. It's Pete's song, Turn, Turn, Turn. And as Pete would invite you, sing along.
To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to bloom, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to love, a time to be. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And the time
Pete's exposure to music as a force for social justice came at a very early age. When he was just a year and a half old, in 1920, his parents took a road trip to the hills of North Carolina. His mother, Constance, was a concert violinist and a teacher. His father, Charles, was a pianist and a musicologist. Charles had been hounded out of his position, his teaching position, for his radical socialist sentiments. Ironically, from UC Berkeley. I think they gave him an honorary degree much later in his life. The family of four returned from California to the Seeger's family home in New York. There, Pete's father built a trailer with a fold-out concert stage, and they headed south to bring free classical concerts to the music-deprived hillfolks. This well-intentioned but unsuccessful social experiment ended one evening 6 months later with the discovery that, in fact, the backcountry folks had their own music all the time. Fiddles and banjos appeared, and the North Carolinians sang their mountain songs to say farewell to their peculiar city friends. Influences on little Pete: he was born into a family that believed in the power of music for social change, and he heard his first authentic folk music at the age of 2. Much later, in 1936, after Pete's high school graduation, his father was administering music programs for the Resettlement Administration, which was part of the New Deal. The two took a road trip back to the hills of North Carolina, where Pete was introduced to the 5-string banjo. He discovered that the 5-string banjo was essential to authentic Appalachian sound, and it soon replaced his ukulele and his 4-string Dixieland banjo. He said of the music he heard that summer, "The words of the folk songs had all the meat of life in them. Their humor had a bite. It wasn't trivial. Their tragedy was real, not sentimental. In comparison, most of the pop music of the 30s seemed to me weak and soft, with its endless variations on Baby, Baby, I Need You."
So we're going to do a tune that he might have heard on that trip, and we hope you'll join us as we travel up Cripple Creek. That fall of 1936, Pete entered Harvard University on a partial scholarship with the intent of earning a degree in journalism. 2 years later, he left, having spent more of his time on music and politics than on studies. He was young, idealistic, and didn't really know what to do with his life. Just that he wanted to make a difference for justice in the world, play music, and have some fun at it. For a stretch, he tried to sell his paintings of farm buildings to their owners. Sang with a dance troupe, played banjo with a traveling puppet show, and observed firsthand the effects of union organizing in dairy farming disputes. That same year, he met Toshi Aline Ota and Alan Lomax, both pivotal life events. Toshi and Pete would eventually marry, raise a family, and cement a business partnership that supported Pete in his subsequent activism. Alan came to Pete's immediate rescue, inviting him to work as his assistant for the summer at the Library of Congress Archive of American Folksong. Alan had traveled with his father, John Lomax, collecting songs in the prisons and camps of the Deep South, and publishing and promoting them as a vibrant American art form. Pete kept busy that summer, cataloging and transcribing folk songs from field recordings, in the process discovering the depth and breadth of American folk music. Later, back in New York, Alan introduced Pete to Huddie Ledbetter, also known as yeah. We gave him a success experience. It's important. John and Alan had met Leadbelly in a Louisiana prison in 1933 and eventually brought him to New York. Pete learned all he could from Leadbelly's gritty lifestyle and hard-driving 12-string guitar playing. Pete was still scrambling to get the rent paid, even working as a porter at the 1939 World's Fair, and living in a communal house while he honed his musical and political ideas. In early 1940, he sang at the Grapes of Wrath benefit concert for California migrant workers. Fellow performers included Merle Ives, Josh White, Richard Dyer Bennett, Aunt Molly Jackson, and Leadbelly. It was there he met, this would be a really big leap, W. He met W. He met Woody Guthrie. At Woody's urging, the two men set off to educate 21-year-old Pete about life on the road. Woody, at 27, married with 3 children, was a stark contrast to Pete. We now know that Woody suffered from Huntington's disease, a neurological disorder affecting his ability to function. While he was nearly incapable of focusing on tasks, his brain continuously fired off poetry, driving him to type for hours on end and grab any tune he could find to set the words to music. It was his passion for making songs of the life he saw around him that inspired Pete's own blossoming musical interests. Pete had no regrets learning more on the road than he had in classes. With guitar and banjo in tow, Pete and Woody saw firsthand the lingering effects of the Great Depression. From his relatively secure and comfortable perspective on life, his eyes were opened to the hardships and desperate plight of those out of work and those who worked long hours with no safety, no pensions, no hope of securing even a portion of the well-being he had known. Pete and Woody wrote and sang songs whenever and wherever they could around hobo campfires, migrant camps, union halls. Many of their songs made use of existing melodies. For example, they took an old fiddle tune called Red Wing and added verses to make it work as a union organizing song. We're going to sing and play it for you now on guitar and bowed psaltery. You're welcome to take a closer look at the psaltery after the program. The fiddle tune is called Red Wing. They repurposed it as Union Maid. There once was a Union maid. She never was afraid of the goons and the beans and the company fakes and the deputy sheriffs that made the raid. She went to the Union Hall when meeting it was was all. And when the Pigeon boys came round, she always stood her ground.
Oh, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union. Oh, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union till the day I die.
This Union maid was wise to the tricks of the company's spies. She couldn't be fooled by the company's stool. She'd always organize the guys. Always got her way when she struck for better pay. She showed a card to the National Guard, and this is what she'd say.
Oh, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union. Oh, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union till the day I die.
Plays the psalter, I didn't even have to do the guitar. I could go get a drink of water. People would be mesmerized with just the psalter. So, the Almanac singers grew out of the next period. Members of this ad hoc group included Woody Guthrie and Pete Seeger. He was joined by, he used the name Pete Bowers to avoid endangering his father's government job. Joining them were Lee Hayes, an Arkansas radical who was working on a collection of labor songs, and two well-heeled city boys, Millard Lample and Pete Hawes. The group performed mainly Union and anti-war songs. They once sang at Madison Square Garden for a rally for 20,000 members of the New York Transport Union. In 1941, the Congress of Industrial Organizations, CIO, sponsored the Almanacs on a national tour. The Almanacs sang for radical groups and CIO locals in major cities across the nation. The tour ended after their final San Francisco appearance in 1941, and the members went their separate ways back to the East Coast. Pete and Woody took a detour to Mexico, then worked their way north through Portland to Seattle. In Seattle, they attended a song swapping party called a Who Band. Yes. They took the term back east with them, because that's where the term originated here in Seattle. They took the term back east with them, playing at union halls and lumber camps on the way. The 1961 edition of Webster's Dictionary included a new definition for hootenanny: a gathering at which folk singers entertain, often with the audience joining in. So it only took them 21 years to get it back. By the fall of 1941, as the U.S. grew closer to entering World War II, the Almanac singers replaced their non-intervention songs with pro-war songs. Some, like Round and Round Hitler's Grave, received national airplay. Another was Woody's tribute to those who lost their lives on the first U.S. Navy ship to be sunk by a German U-boat in World War II. This one is sung to the tune of Wildwood Flower. We'll do a verse and a chorus. Probably recognize it. you heard of the ship called the Good Reuben James? And by hard fighting men both of honor and fame. She flew the stars and stripes of the land of the free. Tonight she's in her grave at the bottom of the sea. Tell me what were their names, tell me what were their names. Did you have a friend on the Good Reuben James? Tell me what were their names, tell me what were their names. Did you have a friend on the Good Reuben James? A little bit of a bluegrass lick in there. The Almanac's popularity led to record contract offers, potential stardom, but disclosure of the anti-war songs reversed their prospects. Well, Pete was drafted into the Army in 1942. Although he was trained as a B-24 mechanic, he wound up performing for the troops on the home front and in the Pacific. He was actually snubbed by the classically trained military musicians, even the vaudeville crew. However, he was extremely popular with the troops and famously photographed with Eleanor Roosevelt with his long neck banjo leading a hootenanny at her integrated cafe for soldiers in Washington, D.C. That pictures on both the boards back there. As a hospital coordinator on Saipan, Pete booked luminaries for USO shows. On his own time, he experimented with music rehab for wounded troops and played and performed with his military buddies. The years following World War II were dramatically different. The economy was booming, and the unions now had a foothold in bargaining. Pete's attempt to organize a singing labor movement through a publication known as People's Songs was unsuccessful. Pete was also unable to get many commercial gigs, so he put together a new singing group, the
Weavers.
Original members of the group were Pete Seeger and Lee Hayes from the Almanacs. They were joined by Ronnie Gilbert and Fred Hellerman. During this same time, he and Toshi, with their 3 children, purchased hillside property near Beacon, New York, overlooking the Hudson River. They built a log cabin with the help of friends and found out how to build a cabin by using resources from his public library. If you want to build a log cabin, they've got everything you need to know about it. By this time, J. Edgar Hoover's FBI was compiling a file on Pete and his music. In addition, the citizens group Counterattack issued a pamphlet in 1950 called Red Channels, Communist Influence on Radio and Television. Red Channels listed Pete along with 150 other entertainers who were supposedly manipulating the entertainment industry on behalf of the Communist Party. Counterattack, a publication founded by 3 former FBI agents, go figure, was rumored to be the FBI's unofficial leak. In his years with a full group, the Weavers, Pete's music was less about protest and more about love and life in general, though strongly folk-influenced compared with the popular music of the day. Several Weaver songs reached the top 40, including #1 hits, Goodnight Irene, Senna, 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 and On Top of Old Smoky. Others in the top 40 included Weemaweh, well, that's the Lion Sings Tonight, and Kisses Sweeter Than Wine.
The 1951 hit, Kisses Sweeter Than Wine, is truly an example of the folk process. Seeger wrote, "Now, who should one credit on this song? The Irish, certainly. Sam Kennedy, who taught it to us. Leadbelly, for adding rhythm and blues chords. Me, for 2 new words for the refrain. Lee, who wrote 7 verses. Fred and Ronnie, for paring them down to 5. And the melody was once an Irish lament for a dead cow." Join us on
again, I kiss her again. Oh, and I kiss her again. Oh, kisses sweeter than wine. Oh, kisses sweeter than wine.
He asked me to marry and be his sweet wife, and we would be happy the rest of our lives. He begged and he pleaded like a natural man until, oh Lord, I gave him my hand. Oh, kisses sweeter than wine. Oh, kisses sweeter than wine.
We worked mighty hard, both me and my wife, working hand in hand to make a good life. The corn in the field, the wheat in the bin, I was, oh Lord, the father of twins. Oh, kisses sweeter than wine. Oh, kisses sweeter than wine.
Our children number just about 4. They all had sweethearts and nothing more.
They all got married, they didn't hesitate. There was, oh Lord, the grandfather of 8. Oh, kisses sweeter than wine. Oh, kisses sweeter than wine. Now we are old and ready to go. We get to thinking what happened a long time ago. We had a lot of kids, a lot of trouble and pain, but oh Lord, we do it again. Oh, kisses sweeter than wine. Oh, kisses sweeter than wine. Oh, kisses sweeter than
Hank is going to depart for a moment or two and drop his D. For those of you who know what he's going to do. It's going to be 2. And I think it bears commenting that the reason that the FBI initially was interested in Pete Seeger was because of a letter that he wrote to President Roosevelt objecting to the internment of Japanese Americans. That was the very first thing that brought their attention to him. The Weavers' commercial and critical success was considerable through most of the 50s, though it was hard-earned. Being blacklisted for their association with the Communist Party meant finding audiences brave enough to challenge the inflammatory climate of red baiting. Of course, they found many, including a 1955 sold-out crowd in Carnegie Hall. That's Christmas Eve, 1955. Anybody here? There? Not impossible. It was perhaps inevitable that a person so visible on the world stage should be both respected and reviled for his views. Those who work for social justice are no more or less human than anyone else and make mistakes that are later regretted. And Pete made his fair share, the most famous of which was to join the Communist Party when he was a young man, in company, it must be said, with a great many others who saw sympathy for labor and civil rights, only later discovering what Stalin was doing in the name of progress. Ironically, the Communist Party considered Pete a joke, someone they were willing to allow as window dressing, but considered irrelevant because his objectives were focused narrowly on social justice. As he later commented, he wanted a world where people lived in small villages and took care of each other. The Communist Party tolerated Seeger, but they were not interested in his views. However, In 1955, Pete Seeger was questioned by the later discredited House Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC. A subcommittee was charged with investigating entertainers. Unlike many who were summoned, Pete refused to allow HUAC to violate his right of free speech. He calmly asserted again and again and again that the U.S. Constitution guarantees freedom of association. He said he had no reason to discuss his own affiliations, past or present, with the committee, and that they had no right to ask about them. Though the committee was eventually unfunded and all charges dropped against Pete, the McCarthy-era blacklisting had far-reaching consequences, both good and bad. Being associated with HUAC interviews blackened his good name in the eyes of millions who knew nothing about the details of his life or about this bogus investigation. However, there were also unintended and very beneficial results, one of which is the song Turn, 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 which we sang earlier. Pete's publisher begged him to write non-political songs that would be easier to sell. And Pete figured words from Ecclesiastes would be politically neutral. Seems to have worked for the Byrds. They took it to #1 in 1965. How times change. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. There is a quirky comment in the American Masters documentary on Pete that the whole folk revival owes a debt to the FBI. Okay, the logic goes like this. Because of the blacklisting, Pete was banned from commercial TV and radio from 1953 to 1968. That's 15 years. Actually relieved, free now to sing anything he believed in, Pete turned to grade schools and colleges and found himself warmly welcomed all over the United States. He and Toshi even took the children on a musical world tour for 10 months. I was a junior high student in Tokyo, Japan, in the fall of 1963. Pete came to my school and led a sing-along. I went from singing pop songs like Going to the Chapel and Patches, from old shanty town, to Guantanamera that year. And I've been singing in the folk tradition ever since. A few years ago, a man we met in Bremerton told us how Pete came and sang with his school class regularly for years in Beacon, New York, Pete's hometown. Thanks to Pete, thousands of children grew into generations of folkies. And college students flocked to folk revival concerts and festivals like the one Pete helped establish, the Newport Folk Festival. Again, thanks to Pete, they were already familiar with many of the iconic songs of the era. He called it the Children's Underground. So we say a belated thank you to the FBI. While a great deal of Pete's energies had been focused on labor union activism to this point, his lifelong passion for social justice and ability to inspire others with his music drew him into the civil rights movement at a point when people like Martin Luther King, whom Pete met first in 1956, were galvanizing the nation. And of course, Pete had seen plenty of racial prejudice firsthand over the years. We've learned that Pete and blues harmonica legend Sonny Terry once spent a week at the home of a friend of ours because no Seattle hotel would book them rooms. On a trip south at King's request in 1962, Pete met and sang with Bernice Johnson, who became, with Pete's encouragement, the founder of the Freedom Singers, and later as Bernice Johnson Regan, the founder of, got it, Sweet Honey in the Rock. Oh. Her husband, and I can't remember his first name, Frank Regan, I think it is, was also a member of the Freedom Singers. So she became Bernice Johnson Regan and went on to do Sweet Honey in the Rock. Pete hoped the Freedom Singers would spread freedom songs in the way that the Almanac Singers had sung for union labor groups, and they did. The anthem of the times, We Shall Overcome, came to Pete through the Highlander Folk School. Highlander was a nonprofit organization founded in Tennessee to train rural and industrial leaders for the labor movement. In the 1950s, they focused their efforts on civil rights and desegregation. Pete learned the song there in 1947, tweaked it, passed it along, even published it in people's songs. In 1959, 12 years after Pete first heard the song, Guy Carawan reintroduced We Shall Overcome to Highlander, where it became the anthem for the civil rights movement and eventually the backdrop for the Selma March in 1965. Both Pete and Toshi participated in that march. It continues to inspire hope wherever people unite for social justice. Let's sing a chorus of We Shall Overcome.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday.
So many resonances that that song has in our lives. Business-wise, the mid-60s was a good time for Pete. Unable to appear on commercial TV due to the blacklist, he produced 39 episodes for educational TV of a program called, oh, you got me so excited there, Rainbow Quest. Rainbow Quest. Originally airing on UHF Channel 47 in New York City, it featured many of the era's most famous folk musicians. Johnny Cash and the Carter Family, Buffy St. Marie, Mississippi John Hurt, Malvina Reynolds, Brownie McGee, and Doc Watson, and Donovan. You can find some of these episodes on YouTube. And parenthetically, I will say, he did appear on Sesame Street. And when he went to visit, and I can't remember where we heard, somebody gave us this anecdote. He went to visit this person. This person's young child said, "How's Big Bird?" and Pete went along with the whole thing and talked about Big Bird. So you can find some of those episodes of Rainbow Quest, which was a production. I mean, he produced Rainbow Quest. He did appear on Sesame Street, but he produced Rainbow Quest. It was also in the mid-60s that concern about the Vietnam War found expression at folk revival festivals. Pete's protest songs were in demand around the country. Here's the backstory for one of them. Asked about its origins, Pete said, "I was in an airplane heading to Oberlin College in Ohio to sing, and leaving in my little pocket notebook where I write down ideas, I came across 3 lines that I had read in the translation of a Soviet novel. The 3 lines were, 'Where are the flowers? The girls have played. Where are the girls? They're all married. Where are the men? They're all in the army.' Sitting in the airplane, I rephrased it, added 2 lines that I made up, 'Long time passing' and 'When will we ever learn?' Pete says he wasn't aware that the tune he pulled from his head was actually an old Irish-American lumberjack melody. But that's not the end of the story. Joe Hickerson, an Oberlin College student, heard the song and taught it to summer campers, but added 2 verses that make the song circle back upon itself. Peter, Paul, and Mary took the song up the hit parade charts. Pete still couldn't perform on commercial TV, but his songs were reaching a whole generation through the efforts of others. He also deeply influenced Joe Hickerson, who later in life became head of the Archive of Folk Culture at the Library of Congress. Joe now lives in Portland and is still sharing his traditional folk songs and his life stories. So let's sing Where Have All the Flowers Gone? We're going to do the Peter, Paul, and Mary version, but the last chorus will do Pete's words, when will we ever learn? To Pete and invited him to perform uncensored on their show in 1968. He chose to play an original song that was ostensibly about training maneuvers in 1942, but questions our growing entanglement in the Vietnam War. It's called Waist Deep in the Big Muddy.
Back in 1942, I was a member of a good platoon. We were on maneuvers in Louisiana one night by the light of the moon. Captain told us before the river, that's when it all begun. We were knee deep in the big muddy and the big full set push on. The sergeant said, "Sir, are you sure this is the best way back to the base. Sergeant, go on, I forded this river about a mile above this place. It'll be a little soggy, but just keep slogging. You'll soon become on dry ground. And we were waist deep in the big muddy, and the big fool said, push on. The sergeant said, sir, with all this equipment, no man will be able to swim. Sergeant, don't be a nervous Nelly, the captain said to him. All it takes is a little determination, then follow me, I'll lead on. We were neck deep in the big muddy, and the big fool said, push on. All at once, the moon clouded over. We heard a gurgling cry. A few seconds later, the captain's helmet was all that floated by. The sergeant said, turn around, men, I'll take charge from here on. And we just made it out of the big muddy with a big fool dead and gone. Now I don't want to plant any morals, I'll leave that for yourself. Maybe you're still walking, you're still talking, you like to keep your health. Every time I read the paper, them old feelings come on. We were waist deep in the big muddy, and the big fool said, push on. Waist deep in the big muddy, and the big fool said, push on. Waist deep in the big muddy, and the big fool said, push on. Waist deep, neck deep, soon even a tall man will be over his head. We were waist deep in the big muddy, and the big fool said, push on.
Pete took many songs that were not his own and turned them into folk legends. One of these, Somos el Barco, We Are the Boat, was written by Lori Wyatt and adopted as an anthem in the cleanup efforts on the Hudson River. The cleanup effort project came about because Pete in the late 1960s wondered how to creatively draw attention to the horrific pollution of the Hudson River. He'd been reading about 70-foot-long sloops that used to sail the Hudson in the 19th century. He wondered whether a working replica, complete with a singing crew, might be an attention grabber effective enough to start a cleanup movement. Mary Travers of Peter, Paul, and Mary said, Pete, you're out of your mind. Others were concerned that this would distract from what they considered more important causes. However, one friend noted, the Clearwater Project so many times was almost a failure. Through sheer guts and power, he kept it together with his ability to motivate people. He goes into these projects with the same attitude you or I might have, frustrated, not knowing whether things will turn out right, but somehow he held on long enough till it turned out right. From 1969 until his death, the work of the Clearwater organization was close to Pete's heart, and it continues to flourish. More than 10,000 children and adults every year board Pete's sloop Clearwater and get involved in education, music, and actions related to water cleanup. Let's sing Somos el Barco.
So my guess is that more people in this audience know Somos el Barco than some of our other audiences, because you've known so many of the songs very well. But nevertheless, I will feed you the Spanish words.
Yeah.
So, and we're going to start with the chorus and we'll run through it twice. And the first line is, let's try it out. Somos el barco. Can you do that? Somos el mar.
Somos el mar.
Okay? Yo navego en ti. Yo navego en ti. Tú navegas en mí. And that means we are the boat, we are the sea, I sail in you, you sail in me, which is oddly enough the English words that come after the Spanish. So here we go. I'll feed you the lines the first time. Ready? Somos el barco. Here we go. Somos el barco. Somos el mar. Somos el mar. Yo navego en ti. Yo navego en ti. Tú navegas en mí. Tú navegas en mí. We are the boat. We are the boat. We are the sea.
We're sailing still with a song to help us grow together. If we only will, somos el barco, somos el mar. We are the world, we are the sea. I sail in you, you sail in me. With our hopes we raise the sails to face the wind once more. And with our hearts we chart the waters never sailed before. Somos el barco, somos el mar. No navego en ti, tú navegas en mí. We are the world, we are the sea. I sail in you, I sail in me. I sail in you, you sail in me.
Without a doubt, no other individual in history, and I challenge you to think of someone that tops this. No other individual in history has lifted a cry for freedom for so many years to so many people, all ages, all religions, all ethnic groups, all nations, as has Pete Seeger. He always led into singing together songs, especially seeing eye-to-eye songs. And he never gave up his brand of defiant optimism. He even participated in the 2011 Occupy Wall Street March, walking 30 blocks in the cold with 2 canes to do it. You can see that on YouTube as well. In 2006, he wrote, "Doctors and pills have failed to bring my memory back. But I feel more optimistic about my country and the world as I see women and men in thousands of communities working to solve local problems. My last words? Well, instead of just singing my songs, folks should sing and swap songs by all sorts of people. Songs that circle around the subject of what kind of world we'd like our children and grandchildren to see, and what needs to be done to create that world." Since Pete's death in January of 2014, we've learned of a song he wrote for memorials back in 1964. We'd like to sing it for you now. It's called "To My Old Brown Earth."
To my old brown earth, and to my old blue sky, I'll now give these last few molecules of mine. And you who sing, and you who stand nearby, I do charge you not to cry. Guard well our human chain. Watch well you keep it strong. As long as sun will shine, and this our home keep pure and sweet and green. For now I'm yours, and you are also mine.
In our case, less about speaking truth to power and more about touching hearts and funny bones. In fact, the song To My Old Brown Earth is on our Home at Last CD, and we do have a table up here with our email list, which we urge you to join, and then you can hear about what we're doing out and about. You're welcome to join our email list, please. We'd love to see you at one of our concerts. Thank you to the Kitsap Regional Library for sponsoring this program, but we are going to neglect Pete's advice, and we're going to end with one of his songs, another one of his songs. This one's called Well May the World Go, and you'll pick up the chorus if you don't already know it.
Well, may the world go, the world go, the world go. Well, may the world go when I'm far away.
Again.
Well, may the world go, the world go, the world go. Well, may the world go when I'm far away.
Well, may the skiers turn, the swimmers churn, the lovers burn. Peace, may the generals learn when I'm far away.
Well, may the world go, the world go, the world go. Well, may the world go when I'm far away.
Sweet may the fiddle sound, banjo play the old one down. Dancers swing round and round when I'm far away.
Well, may the world go, the world go, the world go. Well, may the world go when I'm far away.
Fresh may the breezes blow, clear may the streams flow.
Blue above,
Green below when I'm far